Welcome back to Beat the Count. We are live here at Sweet Science Boxing Gym in Hawthorne, California. Not a lot of boxing happening this weekend, but I got a couple guys here anyway to talk about Adam Lopez. What's going on, brother?
How's it going, guys? Thanks for having me.
Of course. Adam is, of course, promoted by Top Rank.
Yep.
And you are the junior NABF Featherweight Champion.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And with me, as always, to grill our guest. No, I'm just kidding. He won't be too hard with you. Lead writer for Supreme Boxing, Anthony Stacks Saldana. What's up, Stacks?
Man, what's up, gentlemen? Good to be here.
Good to be here. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out here on a Sunday.
That's right.
It's not so hot in here today.
Man, it's actually cool out here in the coast. I heard last week you guys were like dripping in sweat, man.
We were dripping in sweat. I was also taking a little heat from the fans last week. You check out the Instagram and YouTube posts. Woo!
Man, they rip, like, articulately try to, like, break you down on what these guys, these two guys do, man.
Let me real quick before we get into the background.
Wow.
Do you have a strength and conditioning coach? Do you have someone who specializes in strength and conditioning?
Yeah, I do.
You do? And do you mind saying this individual's name?
His name's Marlon.
And was Marlon, did he have a boxing background?
No, didn't.
He did not. Look at that.
Wouldn't you know?
Wouldn't you know it?
Wouldn't you
Are
know?
you crazy? Are you crazy? No, you know what? I had a couple guys on here, one of whom trained with PJ Sheridan, who actually is someone who lives almost in this gym. He's here every day. And I had strength and conditioning coach Jerry Arias of Titan Edge, who is the strength and conditioning coach for a number of professional boxers that have been on the show. And I would say that episode was met with a lot of skepticism and criticism as those not being quote-unquote boxing people. And it's because I do understand that to some extent the attitude is that, hey, the sport needs to evolve. We need to be doing more to train athletes in the ways of strength and conditioning scientifically, not just, carrying over tradition or training as a result of tradition. And so that was met with a lot of heat, I would say. But I would also say that the majority of fighters who are, extremely talented young fighters like yourself who come on this show and talk about it, they use strength and conditioning coaches from what I see. It's a part of the game, right?
I think it helps. I think it definitely helps.
It's just the evolution of science, man. With technology and with the way people study the bodies and the way we have computers and the way we have all these advancements in the medical science, it's only natural that we are going to evolve as human beings and realize that there's more to our body than running in Big Bear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I would say some fighters overdo it with strength and conditioning.
That's
like for me,
perfectly fair.
I have an 8-week camp, and I'll do 4 weeks of conditioning, and then the last 4 just boxing.
Yeah, because
just boxing.
You've just boxing. There you go. You've heard of.
There's one of those in your basket, by the way.
I mean, you've heard of people overtraining.
Yeah.
When Chavez Jr. said when he fought Canelo, that he couldn't get off a punch because he had spent so much time at altitude trying to lose weight, trying to get ready for that fight, that when he came back down and it was time for him to fight, that he couldn't even get off a punch just because his body was broken down. Mentally, he wanted to, but his body just wouldn't let him.
Yeah, well, to your point, nobody's saying that it can't be done wrong.
Yeah.
You can do it incorrectly, but then again, I think that there's a lot of things you could do incorrectly. You can practice boxing footwork, defense. You can do a lot of those things incorrectly. And so my only statement is really, well, two things. One is that there's a place for it, and a lot of the young fighters who we come across use strength and conditioning coaches, yourself included.
Yep.
And the other thing is, I'm not sure what type of resume you need to possess to be considered a boxing guy, right? Like, so for instance, I'm talking about individuals who came on who legitimately train undefeated professional fighters who live in boxing gyms. Like, PJ's here every single day. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm not sure. And he was also an All-American boxer from WVU as an amateur. So I'm kind of like, I don't know what in your resume turns you into a boxing guy instead of a meathead.
I can see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
I don't necessarily think somebody has to be in the ring to understand the sport, to understand the science, to understand different technicalities of the sport, whether it's the way people throw a punch, whether it's the way they train to condition to get ready for a fight. Is it a plus? Of course, because nothing's going to beat that experience of somebody that's been in that ring and knowing what it takes to get in that ring, whether it's physically, mentally, or whatnot. But that doesn't take away from the fact that even some of the best trainers in the world, some of them have never been in the ring or have never fought, including Joe Calzaghe's dad.
Sure.
Enzo Calzaghe.
Sure.
So, I mean,
even beside the point, we're talking about a completely different discipline. The people that you're talking about, boxing trainers, they focus on craft. They focus on strategy. I actually saw, you are, of course, I didn't mention this at the top, you're trained by 2019 International Boxing Hall of Fame inductee Buddy McGirt, former trainer of the year.
Yeah.
Has a lot of experience, former world champion. And I heard you in an interview describing Buddy's style. Can you kind of break that down for us here? You mentioned that he corrects fine details, but the bulk of the work is really on you. Is that fair?
He's not in your face 24/7 at the gym at all. Like, he'll let you, do your thing, and he'll correct it along the way. But he really, if you're not showing him that you want it, he won't give you the time at all. He wants to see that you're hungry and you want this. If you don't see it, he'll work with you, but he'll move on to the next fighter. He ain't worried about it because he's got so many fighters and so many, his days are so busy. It's like he ain't going to just be wasting time with nobody.
Exactly. So I think that's a man who's focused on strategy. He's focused on technique. He's focused on these kinds of things. We're talking about entirely different disciplines. Like, for instance, would we be having this conversation if it was about a nutritionist? Do we sit there and go, you're a nutritionist, didn't box. That guy doesn't know anything about nutrition, right? Like, that's silly. Of course, I don't want a boxer to focus on my nutrition. I want someone who specializes in nutrition. And I think that the same could be said about strength and conditioning, which is why I think young men often use strength and conditioning coaches.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to a couple people who jumped on. Aaron Sorio, pound for pound. What's going on, Arian? And then Marco Trejo. Coach Marco Trejo. What's up, Coach? What are you doing? Is he coming down? He might pop in. He popped in last week.
Did he?
Showed up, yeah.
That's
cool. I heard, Nancy Rodriguez might stop by as well, man, from the WBC.
There's another mic right there on the end.
So, yeah. Put her on.
Yeah, I remember you introduced me to Nancy at the WBC show.
The WBC show. So, yeah, she might be stopping by. We still got to get you into the WBC office, man.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Do an interview over there as well.
So something that you mentioned before we got started is your amateur background. So now you train with Buddy McGirt.
Mm-hmm.
You have had a successful professional career thus far, but you didn't have a ton of experience in the amateurs. I heard you describe it as on-the-job training. Can you talk a little bit about that and what made you decide to go professional at the time that you did?
So I had my first amateur fight when I was 12, but at the time I was playing football as well. So football, boxing. When I was playing football, I wasn't boxing. So when I was about 15, I cut football. Like, I was on the team. I was a starting quarterback. I was the man, and then I just, didn't show up to practice one day. And I was like, I'm not going back. And I was like, I want to fight. I was like, I'm wasting time boxing or football. So then from there, I just took the amateurs much more serious. I went to more tournaments. And then when I was about 19, 20, I went down to TJ and I got my first fight on my own. And then when I came back, I had a contract waiting for me by my manager.
That's right. That's the first night I met you, man. I met you in the parking lot out there in TJ, man. I met you and your brother that night, and you had made your pro debut, man.
Yeah. That's how Stacks meets a lot of people, by the way.
Man, met him in the parking lot, man. Yeah, I remember that night, man. So yeah, I think I was out there with a Big Serge Estrada and Cesar Garcia.
Okay,
they had Aleem was fighting that night.
Yeah,
Aleem Khan.
He was. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, before that fight, actually, my manager now, I wasn't signed to him yet. He's like, you don't got to go through this fight. He's like, I can get you a fight, sit up here. And I was like, nah, it's cool. I already set this up. Like, it's on me. I'm going to just follow through because I gave him my word.
Yeah. Because
the promoter down there knew my father, and he was very excited. He's like, oh, we would love to have you, this and that. So I was like, we're going to finish this fight, get through it. And then the following month, my manager had a fight set for, it wasn't Commerce. The Quiet Canyon. Then I had my second fight right there.
So I would ask how you got into boxing, but of course, you're from a family of boxers. So your father, Hector, was an Olympic silver medalist.
Yeah.
And your brother is also a professional boxer.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you started boxing at 12, or that's when you started competition?
That's when I had my first fight.
Okay. So when did you actually get into the gym?
Training. Okay, so my mom did not want me to fight at all whatsoever.
Understandably.
So she put me in every single sport until I was about 10, 11, and then I started nagging her. I was like, Mom, I want to go to the gym. I want to go to the gym. So she's like, all right, I'll take you once a week. You can go once a week and you can train with your uncle. Well, he's a good friend of my father's, Peter Cunningham. So he trained me once a week every Saturday, and I just fell in love with it. And I was just like, Mom, I want to train more. I want to train more. And then I met some people who I went to school with who were training. So I was like, let me come to the gym. And then I started training at their gym, which was the Burbank YMCA. And that's where I met my coach, Steve Harps, David Lopez. And they took me to my first amateur show and got me my first fight when I was about 12.
And you had about 38 amateur fights before turning pro.
Yeah.
You turned pro, and something that I observed about your career, because we've seen you on PBC and FS1. Of course, now you're promoted by Top Rank, and we see you on the Top Rank cards. So you had, in the few amount of fights that you've had an unusual number of undefeated fighters. I think you've faced 6 undefeated fighters, and that started with your 4th professional fight, which a lot of times for people who don't have the extensive amateur background, they come up in a different way.
They don't want to take that route.
Exactly. They don't want to take perhaps the risk, or maybe there's some growth that needs to happen before they can get into fights against guys like that. Can you talk about, in terms of working with your management team, your coaches, how did you decide to take that approach to being noticed?
I knew I was going to do it that way before I even turned pro. I was like, all right, I didn't have a big amateur background. People don't really know who I am. I was like, I got to make some noise early on so I can, make some money and do this. If I really want to do it, I got to make a name for myself. So I told my manager, I was like, whoever wants to fight, let's get it. No problem. So, yeah, I had I think it was the 4th fight. I fought an undefeated kid, and then they just kept coming up. And I was like, cool, let's get it. We're on a roll. Let's keep knocking them out. Boom, 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 boom. And I was like, all right, cool. But then, as I was telling you guys before, I was always on the B side. All 6 of those undefeated fighters, I was always on the B side, and it just wasn't right, And I started realizing. I realized a little late, but I caught it. I'm not an opponent. I shouldn't be treated like an opponent. I got to be having the money behind me, invested in me, so I could have a big household name. So I had to sit down with my manager, have a talk, and, we got things straight. And I was like, yo, we need a promoter. And he made it happen. I got a great manager. He made it happen, and now I'm with Top Rank, one of the best companies in boxing.
I saw an interview where you were vocal about sort of the contract negotiation that went with Top Rank. And one of the things that we've talked about, if you remember when Alfonso Gomez was on here, the importance of having someone representing you, not necessarily your manager or the promoter, but someone representing you, look at that type of contract.
Yep.
And in your case, it sounds like that worked out.
It worked out great, actually.
So you had a lawyer look over the contract and request changes. Is that true?
He saw little things. He's like, look, these aren't fair. This isn't fair. I didn't really know much about it because, it's all lawyer talk, legal stuff. So, my manager brought in a lawyer. We read it over, took some time. We were kind of taking a long time, and I was kind of like, man, we're taking too long. Let's just sign it and get it done. And my manager's like, no, slow down. If they want you, they're gonna sign it no matter what. So we requested the changes. The next day, they're like, no problem. We want Adam Lopez. And then we signed it, and deal got done quick.
That's good, man. That's great. That's great that you had somebody look over that, because one thing I'm falling back onto lately in the last couple episodes, and then another podcast I was on, is in regards to Ryan Garcia and his whole situation with Golden Boy. Apparently they made over $1 million on one of his shows that he headlined out at Fantasy Springs, and he was paid $50,000 for that show, right? But what it falls back to is not jumping in feet first, man, and actually looking over that contract. If he felt that he was going to be that big of a superstar on social media and sell that many tickets, then maybe they should have thought about that before they signed the contract, saying, hey, after so many sales, after so many fights, if I can sell so many tickets, then I need a certain bonus. If you're signing me for $50,000 a fight, but I sell out the stadium and you make so much money, maybe a percentage would go to him. I don't know the contracts because I didn't look at them. I don't want to know what the contracts are personally. But the thing is if it was written the way he'd wanted it to be written and his manager wanted it to be written, it wouldn't be in this situation with Golden Boy right now.
I agree.
And it's tough, because sometimes people do depend on that money. Maybe his family needed that money. Maybe he needed the money at that time. And it was like, let's just sign. Let's get this big bonus they're giving us. not thinking that a year down the line he'd have
Long
3 million.
term.
Yeah, long term, that he'd have 3 million followers on social media and could sell out the StubHub Center and places like that.
And to Adam's point, right? We can't expect young people who are not legally trained professionals to understand every word of the contract or the business that goes into it. And so a lot of it is, it sounds like in your case, you were surrounded by the right people to help protect you from, you know, that sort of dealing. And that's the challenge, is that a lot of times I imagine there is excitement and things like that around signing those contracts.
Definitely.
I mean, even you, having gone through that, sounded very excited to have gotten the deal.
I was like, oh, let's sign it right now. Let's go. But he was like, hold on, let's read it over, check it out, see what we got.
Exactly. Like, we can't expect you to know. We have to have, and that's why it's so important, I think.
Exactly.
To get the legal professionals in.
Yeah. When you look at the sport of boxing and some of the biggest names in the sport, they're lawyers. You look at Bob Arum. You look at Steven Espinoza. Their background is law.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so they know the ins and out, not just of the sport, but the legalities of contracts and whatnot. So,
you were, of course, a former sparring with Ryan Garcia, correct?
I've sparred with him
a long time
a
ago.
few times, yeah. A while ago. He was still an amateur. I think I was still an amateur. We were both pretty young still.
Yeah, but since then, he's sort of grown into a bigger weight class than you participate in right now.
Yeah.
How are you feeling physically? Do you feel like you filled out, or do you feel like you'll continue to grow into weight classes beyond where you are? Are you comfortable with the weight?
I'm comfortable right now, but I know I'm still growing. I'm still 23 years old, so I'm just going to see how it goes. I have no problem fighting at 130, 135 eventually, but right now, this is where I need to be at 126.
And you recently had to have surgery.
Yeah, man.
Unfortunately. So we expected to see you on a Top Rank card, actually here, right? At Bank of California.
It was the Bank of California.
Yeah, August 17th.
Yeah, the Bank of California inaugural Top Rank event. But can you describe what you've had to go through for the surgery and for the recovery?
Yeah, I'm still recovering. I still got a month of I can't really do much right now. But it just came out of nowhere, to be honest. Like, I started feeling stomach pains. It was just really weird. And then I just thought it would go away, so I went to sleep. I was like, all right, I'm cool. Woke up the next day, I started sparring. I got hit in the stomach, and I felt my stomach shock. I was like, what was that? And then I went home. I couldn't eat nothing. Then later that night, the pain just got, like, through the roof. I couldn't handle it, and I started throwing up. Oh. And then I was like, I got to go to the ER right now. So I went to the ER. The next day, they cut me open, took it out, and they told me 2 months I can't lift nothing up. I can't do push-ups. I can't punch nothing. They said all I could do was cardio. So right now I'm just running, keeping my weight down, and I'm supposed to be fighting November 2nd. So as soon as I'm back to full health, I got to get right back into training.
So November 2nd is going to be the Burchelt fight at StubHub Center.
Yep.
Top Rank got a card November 2nd. He is fighting Jason Sosa.
Yeah.
Jason Sosa and Miguel Burchelt that night. So
it's a good little fight.
Yeah, and if you don't make it for the second, I know Top Rank has a big card coming up also November 30th back at the Bank of California Arena with Victor Postal fighting Jose Ramirez.
Oh,
and the undercard, the co-main event is going to be Carl Frampton against Isaac Dogbo.
Dogbo's a gym mate of mine now.
Yeah. Oh, is he? Is he training there? Okay.
He's training at our gym now. He's back with my manager. We got the same manager.
Because I know he was training at Maywood for a while.
Yeah.
At Maywood for a while. So good. Yeah. So that Top Rank has a few cards here in California. So hopefully, we'll be able to see you on one of those cards. If not November 2nd, hopefully November 30th. But whatever, however you heal.
Yeah.
And as long as your body's ready for it,
exactly.
because the last thing you want to do is
go into a fight not ready. And
exactly.
Yeah.
I heard an interview with you in December where you talked about you've actually been training some fighters as well, including people who are competing in the amateurs. So I'm wondering, is while you've been out of action,
that's all
have you been in the gym training young fighters? I've
been training people since I can't train. Yeah, I got 3 fighters fighting on the 15th. So that's not 2 weeks from now. Yes, I got this young kid who's 15. I got another kid who's I think he's 12, and then I got a friend of mine who's 29. He's just doing it for fun. He loves it. So, I mean, I enjoy it, and that's kind of what I want to do when I retire is become a trainer.
What gym do you train out of? Pullman's?
No, McGirt's. Buddy McGirt's boxing club.
So he does have McGirt has his own gym there?
Yeah, we got our own gym over there.
In the Valley?
In Northridge, yeah.
In Northridge, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
how did you discover the first client? Like, who was when did you decide, like, I've got the bug for training as well? And how did you work with that young talent to sort of develop them?
Before I even turned pro, I was still an amateur. I was teaching classes in Sherman Oaks, boxing classes. I was teaching like 3-4 classes a day, kids, adults, just whatever, you know. It wasn't good money, but it was fun. So I was like, all right, it's pretty cool. But then I didn't start training fighters until almost a year ago. My friend who's 29, his name's Evan, he came up to me. He was like, hey, man, you think you could train me? I was like, sure, why not? Started training him, and he really looks up to me as a fighter, so he just, like, took everything I threw at him. He was listening to everything. So I was like, all right, maybe I could do this. You know, I got a good eye for boxing. I got a good voice, good advice, and he's actually grown a lot. He wants to turn pro, but I was like, he only got 4 amateur fights, so I was like, hold on, just wait a minute.
I think you'll have to deal with that a lot as you coach more and more young guys, you know what I mean? They all want to turn pro right away.
Mm-hmm.
So with your amateur background not being very extensive and then turning pro, was your style always like a pro style then?
Always, man. I always, in the amateur fights, I would always come on the last round and I would lose the fight. I would always go to the Golden Gloves. I'd make it to the finals and I would lose on points. Just every time. I've never won a tournament. Every tournament I've gone to, I've never won. Just because I didn't have that style, the points. And I couldn't see why would I go into that style when I turn pro. I'm going to need this. So I was like, I'm going to just perfect this pro style. So when the time comes, I'll be set.
So you did, though, achieve some gold here as a professional, as you are now the junior NABF Featherweight Champion.
Yeah,
Can you tell about how that came to be?
Well, it's crazy. They offered John Carlos Rivera maybe a year ago before I was signed with Top Rank. They gave me, when I was a free agent, they gave me the fight, 2-week notice. And I was looking at it, I was like, man, I could beat this kid. But I was like, they're going to put me on the B side. I'm going to have to knock him out, this and that. And I was kind of just taking a little break right there. My manager's like, what do you think? I was like, they wanted to fight at 126. I was like, let's move the weight up and I'll take it. And they're like, nah, they ain't budging. So I was like, all right, forget it. Just let it pass. Then he came around again. I was like, perfect. This is the one I wanted. And then when it came up, I showed it to Buddy. I was like, Buddy, what do you think? He's like, if they put a belt on the line, we'll take it. I was like, all right, Andy, get a belt for this fight. No problem.
There you go.
Yep.
Works out.
that fight right there, man, it seriously for me is probably could be fight of the year. It was an all-action fight. Did you watch the fight? Did you see the fight? I've been following you for a while, man, on social media, been following your fights and whatnot. And when you got into it and you started getting on the inside with them early, I said, this isn't the fight that he needs, man. He needs to step out. I'm telling my wife, you know, he needs to get away from this kid. This kid he's flat-footed, and he's banging. He's a banger. He's fighting the wrong style, and then he puts you on your ass, right? But then you listen to everything Buddy told you. Buddy's like in that corner was telling you, you need to fight your style. You need to box. You need to do this. And once you did, and once you changed it and went back to your style of fighting, you took over. He couldn't hang with you. It was just. And it wasn't necessarily your power, even though you stopped him. It was just the onslaught of the punches that you were landing on him, where he couldn't catch up to you, boxing him from the outside. You turned it on, man. You used your knowledge and you turned it on. So congratulations to you on that win. Because
thank you, man.
It was impressive.
Thank you.
I think his only loss coming up to that fight was
Jason Sanchez.
Yeah, the kid that fought Valdez in Reno. Yeah. So man, that was
and Jason took Rivera 10 rounds.
Yeah. So.
But, I asked Buddy, I was like, Buddy, why do you think I got dropped? He's like, I'll tell you why. After the first round, he's like, what's the first thing you told me? And I remember after the first round, as soon as I sat down, I was like, this kid's basic, Buddy. I got him. He's like, you relaxed. You got comfortable. You let him get close, and you let him hit you with that shot. So that was on me, you know. That's a learning lesson. I took the hard way to learn that lesson, but just got to stay sharp no matter what.
In terms of learning experiences, you have a lone blemish on your record, which is a competitive fight against Fulton. And what I will say about that fight is it was especially competitive early on, where it seemed as though you were in control of the early rounds and even hurt him, I think, in the second round of that fight. Yeah, you caught him good, and he was on shaky legs at least for another round and a half before sort of coming back into that fight. it's interesting because when you listen to the announcers on PBC, in this case, I think it was Ray Flores and Robert Guerrero, they're kind of speculating about some of the things that are going on in the ring. And sometimes I'm curious about how much of that is true or not true. So, for instance, they mentioned that perhaps you were having difficulty breathing in that fight. And I'm not asking you to come up with an excuse, but do you feel as though the few shots you took in the third round that caused some damage to your nose had caused that trouble with breathing?
Nah, I don't think the nosebleed was, I mean, it was irritating, but I could breathe fine. Honestly, it was just the weight cut. I had a really hard time making weight. And after that fight, I moved up. I moved up to 126. I knew I couldn't make 122 no more. I was like, I'm too tall. I can't kill myself for this weight. I was like, it's not worth it. So I just moved up after that, and that's why I feel a lot more comfortable at 126, and I feel like I'm growing into it still.
Yeah, and Fulton, if they give him the fight that he wants, he's going to have his hands full with Brandon Figueroa.
Yeah, I think Figueroa, that pressure would get to him.
He went into the ring after Figueroa fought and basically called out Brandon, and the Heartbreak Kid is going to break Fulton's heart, I tell you that.
They offered me Figueroa after I lost to Fulton.
At 22 again?
At 122 in his hometown. I was like, this don't make no sense. What is this?
That was PBC.
Yeah.
That offered you that.
They're like, oh, he's good. We want him back on TV. Come on. He's a great fighter. The people love him. I was like, I ain't going to. What is this?
Yeah.
A couple things real quick on the chat. Shout out, Marco. Thank you. I appreciate the congratulations. Eddie Rodriguez, Sr., matchmaker extraordinaire. Thanks for joining in.
What's up, Eddie?
Ivan Castaneda, man.
Yeah, that's my boy, Ivan.
Your boy. He's listening in.
What's up, Ivan?
Thanks, you guys, for joining in. In terms of blemishes, we actually had a guest here formerly, Adan Ochoa, who is a former opponent of yours.
Yes, sir.
And the reason I want to bring this up is because we actually talked about your fight because you are the sole loss on his record. Of course, he has one loss, and it is
much
the
respect to
the gentleman sitting here. And that's what I want to bring up. So Adan Ochoa said, I went to the locker room afterwards, and I thanked him because I learned from that. That's what he told me when he was sitting in that chair. And I found the clip on YouTube where that happened, and Buddy McGirt actually gave high praise, and he said young men don't normally have this level of respect. Can you sort of comment a little bit on that experience?
Yeah. I mean, I was just getting back to the locker room, and he just showed up right there. He's like, hey, man, just want to say thank you for taking this fight. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to fight you, this and that. And he was just really grateful for everything, even though he lost. I could see he was down because he got his first loss, and it was hard on him, but much respect to him because he kept pushing, he kept fighting no matter what. He's what, 10-1 or something?
10-1, I think.
He's doing really well, and I just hope he keeps going forward.
Yeah, it was a good fight. I was close to Adan's former manager. Me and Cesar Garcia, we're pretty tight knit there for a while. And I've always known you, man. So Adan hit me up. He's like, hey, man, I'm fighting once you come out to the fight. I'm like, well, who you fighting? I'm fighting Blu Nose. I'm like, yeah, we ain't going to that fight, man.
His coach told me, or his former coach who was training him at the time told him, he's like, I told him not to take the fight. It was too soon, this and that. But I respect that he wanted to challenge himself and take that tough fight.
And that's what I talked to him yesterday afternoon, as a matter of fact. And not necessarily about you in the fight, but just the fact that when fighters finally lose that sometimes it takes that pressure off them to try not to have to stay undefeated anymore. Sometimes it's a learning experience. Like, you know what? I've got a loss. I know what it feels like. So that extra pressure is not on them as a fighter. And they can continue to grow. They can learn from that loss. A lot of times it's a learning experience, and they can get better because sometimes you have these fighters that come in and they pad their records. Even though fighters for the first 12 to 14 fights should win every one of their fights when they're building them up, they still need to put a level of talent in front of them that they can grow, and they can use it as a measuring stick to grow from and to learn from, not necessarily to get in there and lose,
just to test,
to test themselves and to grow. And it just so happened that they put two undefeated fighters in against each other, and he took the L. But you know what? He'll learn from it, and he'll continue to grow, man.
That was a fun fight, man. That was a fun fight. He had about 100 people. I had 100 people there. It was a small spot, but it was loud up in there. It was super loud.
That was Roy Jones card, right?
Yeah. And he was wearing red, and I was wearing blue, and all these people wearing red, all my people wearing blue. It was cool, man.
Nice.
It was a really fun fight.
All right. So there's a couple things that I pulled from recent interviews. I talked about this a little bit before, but before I ask you about them,
This guy.
we're going to do a little bit of a new segment here.
Okay.
I'm already stumped.
Stump Stacks. It's time to stump stacks with boxing facts. So here's how it works. I've pulled 3 tidbits about Adam Lopez, and I will relay them to you. 2 of them are true, according to recent interviews that I saw, and 1 of them I made up. So, Stacks, your job is to guess which one of these is true or not. Are you ready to play Stump Stacks?
Let's go.
Okay. Number 1, or we'll call it A. Adam has sparred MMA fighters and even allows kicks above the waist. Number 2, according to Adam's mom, his father Hector took Bob Arum's daughter to prom. And number 3, his brother Hector, who is also a professional fighter, moonlights as a computer programmer. He's trying to read it from you, dude. He's trying to get it off your face.
No, man, I'm not even looking at the dude.
That was a great poker face, by the way. I was watching him.
I'm looking at you. I'm not even looking at him.
Yo, you got some good facts there. I don't know how you
Yeah,
got
I'm gonna say
one of those is false, correct? The other
Yeah.
2 are true? Okay.
I'm gonna say the Arum thing's false, man. No. Your dad took Arum's daughter to prom?
Yeah.
You lose.
Damn.
I would never get kicked, man. I'm not letting nobody kick me.
Well, I figured you ain't getting kicked. All right, man. I don't know. It just sounded good.
I love this segment. I'm doing this from now on.
That was great, man. I like this. The segment is good. I actually like it, man.
That was cool.
Because all 3 of them are. Well, the computer program, I can understand his brother going to school and maybe programming stuff. So I'm like, yeah, his brother's.
That's what he's doing right now. He's doing really well at it.
Figured he was doing that, but the prom, it was the MMA thing. I was like, is he gonna let him get kicked? Maybe, but then he'll just beat his ass. So it's probably the prom thing, man.
So here's the interesting thing. I put according to your mom because at the time of the interview, which was with shout out to Xavier Porter, who I don't know, but this was a great interview that I had gone through with you. At the time of the interview, you weren't sure about the legitimacy of this claim, and you had just been signed to Top Rank.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to confirm with Bob Arum if in fact you?
Once I sit down and talk with him, I've like taken pictures with him like at the fights and stuff, but I've never got to sit down and speak with him. I'm gonna ask him as soon as I get to.
Let us know.
Yeah,
I gotta know.
Because I gotta know too. I gotta know what happened.
Well, there it was, Stump Stacks with boxing facts.
There you go. I was stumped for the.
You
for the
lose.
first time. I lost.
Do you know what that one's from?
No,
No?
you stumped me again.
That's from Willy Wonka.
Willy Wonka. Really? Willy Wonka?
That's from Willy Wonka, bro.
The old Willy Wonka? Or the new one?
the old one.
All right.
Have you ever seen that one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, it lives on, man.
Yeah, man.
Oh, wow. There were a few fights this weekend, but not much in terms of action.
No,
Which is actually kind of weird for this day and age, where we have all these platforms that show fights, and they're contracted to do 50-plus events a year. To have very few, is kind of I'm at a loss of what to say. But there were a couple good ones. Did you guys check any of them out?
I seen the Crazy 8 fight.
Oh, you did? Hoban Asean.
Yeah, against Manzanilla.
That was a good fight.
Real good fight, man. All action.
No, I missed that one.
It was at
But
Belasco Thursday night.
I've boxed with that kid a few times at Wild Card.
Which one?
Azat?
Yeah.
Hoban Asean?
He's a strong kid, man. Real strong.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
they were fighting in a title eliminator. Both men, of course, have lost to Ray Vargas, but they're competing in a title eliminator. And Hoban Asean, really, what appeared to be the big difference to me is the effect of Manzanilla's power on Hoban Asean, which is to say that there wasn't much of one.
No, he walked through
Yeah,
it.
he was able to
Walking
take
through his
those
punches.
He was taking plenty of punches. They just didn't seem to have an impact on him or his game plan. And at the end of the day, he was able to break him down, and it was almost like the stoppage came from exhaustion.
Yeah.
He was just getting beat up so much that he kind of just took a knee and decided he couldn't get back up.
That was it.
But that was a Golden Boy Thursday night fight. So, of course, Hoban Asean won that title eliminator, taking the punches really well at that weight class. But that's about it. There wasn't much else that happened this weekend in terms of boxing, except, of course, Mikey Garcia or Garcia Promotions.
Yeah, the Garcia Promotions.
Yeah, had a card where featuring B-Fly.
Yeah.
Who was
Brandon Macias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brandon, who was on there. So, just some local boxing action, really.
Mikey's starting to do more stuff there in the Inland Empire, so that's good. Trying to get some of his fighters a little bit more exposure. I know he does a lot of fights out in Texas as well. A A lot of times before they have big fights in Dallas, they'll have fights the night before at a little club there in, I want to say Arlington, that they put up their fights in as well. So, yeah, shout out to Mikey. He'll be, Mikey will actually be joining us Friday night at the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame. So he'll be there signing autographs at our new museum. We have a meet and greet and a boxing night with legends. So we'll have Mikey there for the fans. If you guys are in Vegas and you guys want to show up, if you guys are out there for the Fury fight, we are located inside the mall on Maryland Parkway, inside of Heads Up. It's the Las Vegas Interactive Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame Museum. We'll have Mikey there. We'll have several other fighters. It's $25 to get in. All your drinks are comped with that purchase, and you'll receive raffle tickets. And what we'll do is we'll put you in a raffle for 2 tickets to Tyson Fury's fight at the T-Mobile Arena Saturday night as well. So
what day is that event? I'm gonna be at the fight.
The event's Friday night. So if you wanna join us, man, I'll give you all the information afterwards. You're more than welcome to come by, man.
Yeah, I'll come by.
Yeah, for sure.
You go check out the fight?
Yeah, I'm gonna go out to Vegas and check it out. I went to Fury's last fight. He puts on a great show.
Nice.
Doesn't he?
Yeah, he puts on a
really
great
does.
show.
Yeah, and you know it's miraculous because I feel like every time I see a picture of him, he's just getting in better and better shape. So obviously he had a long way to go, and we thought, by the time of the Wilder fight, like, wow, he's looking much improved over where he had been, which he was. But since then, his next fight, he looked even in better shape, and you look at pictures of him now, he's continued to improve throughout. I think that if he's going to be facing Deontay Wilder in February, he's going to be facing a much more fit and agile man than he faced in December of last year.
Yeah, you got to remember he had taken all that time off because of his mental health issues, because of his drug and alcohol problems. I think he fought one fight before he went into the fight with Wilder. So, yeah, this fight's going to be completely different. And that's if Wilder gets past Luis Ortiz this time.
That's a tough fight, too.
Luis Ortiz is tough, man. And, can't make excuses for him losing the fight, but they're even now questioning whether or not that referee gave him extra time in the 9th, which I remember discussing with you about, man. Is like they should have stopped that fight when he was hurt, and then he goes
when Wilder was hurt.
Then
they could have. Yes, they could have.
Then they go into the corner, they let him get his full minutes rest before, instead of having the doctor take a look at him. They let him get back up, get ready to start the 10th, call time, and then bring the doctor into the ring for another 2.5, 3 minutes, and let basically Wilder recuperate, and it's just like...
Yeah, I don't think that...
I don't think that's...
I don't know. I don't know that I agree that a stoppage there would have been good, but I think that in many professional boxing contests, that would have been stopped, and that would be okay. Oh, what do we got going on?
We have some special guests coming in the back door. Well, I shouldn't say guests. Guests. We have
coming in the back door.
Coming in the back door, we have our regular photographer, Cynthia Saldana, who's back there with, it looks like,
random stranger. No, I don't know who. You're distracting the audience.
A couple
brother.
Of people back there.
Distracting the audience.
Man, we have Nancy Rodriguez from the WBC coming in, dressed up in her Sunday's best.
As we discuss heavyweights, I assume you're following what's going on in terms of heavyweight status with Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz ready to compete again in December. Do you consider yourself like a boxing fan? Do you keep up with that kind of stuff? Or is it more just like
here and there?
Participation?
I don't really, to be honest, I don't watch boxing too much. If it's a really good fight and like the people who I...
Go ahead, brother.
If there's like a fighter that I like, then I'll check it out. But I actually missed the Loma Janko fight.
Oh, you did?
I miss a lot of fights sometimes. I don't know. I get sidetracked, busy training people. Just
understandably so, with everything that you have going on in terms of your training and training others. Yeah. I'm surprised you missed the Lomachenko fight. Stacks hasn't really had a chance to comment on that. You actually sparred Lomachenko, correct?
Yeah, I did.
Can you talk about what that experience was like?
That man is very, very dangerous. In the gym, it's like completely just strictly business. No music playing, nobody's talking, nobody's telling jokes. It's like they come into the gym, they do their work, and they're gone. Like, it's very serious.
Something else I heard you say is that it feels like a real fight.
Yeah, he's on you. He's on you. He's trying to knock
you out for sure.
I think I boxed with him the first 2 rounds, and the first round he was kind of just filling me out, and then like halfway into the first round he just threw like a 10-punch combination and landed like 7 of them. I was like, oh damn, we're in a fight now. I was like, all right, I gotta get moving.
Wow. How long ago was that? Was he a professional at that time?
Who?
Loma Janko.
Yeah, he was getting ready to fight Rick India.
Oh, okay.
So I had to fight him southpaw. So it was a little bit of a trick.
A little bit, but I would say that you transition pretty comfortably between the two, having watched your fights.
I used to do it a lot more, and Buddy told me no more. He's like, you got to cut it. But then for a few, like if people need southpaw work, he'd be like, you could do it. Go ahead, switch. So I'm like, all right.
At least you get the practice in that way.
Yeah, so I kind of practiced it a little more the last few months, but I don't really do it in the fights no more.
So a couple of things, man. Signing with Top Rank and training under Buddy McGirt. How close were you to Maxim Dadashev, man?
Max, he was very to himself in the gym. He didn't speak much. But once I was in his training camp for his last fight, I was one of his main sparring partners. And with him, too, I had to spar southpaw because they said his opponent switched. So I was like, all right, come in southpaw. We like your speed. And the last few times we were sparring, he kind of opened up more and he was speaking more. And he was just the most disciplined fighter I've ever met. Like, he was just to the T, and he wouldn't let nobody speak to Buddy when they were training. He's like, no, you guys can't speak to Buddy. I need Buddy's all attention right here. He was just so disciplined, and I was like, he's going to go in this fight. He's going to outbox this kid, no problem. So when I heard what happened, it just took me by surprise.
And how have you seen a change in Buddy in your training or the way he's training other fighters since this tragedies occurred?
They're definitely more cautious, but Buddy's always been very cautious because I think he's been around the game for a while and he knows how dangerous it is. But my assistant coach, Ivan, who was helping Buddy in the corner, it definitely affected him more because that was his first experience seeing it. After it happened, he called me. He's like, this is not a game. He's like, we need to be defense, no matter what. He's like, we can't be getting hit no more. And I could tell it changed his perspective a little bit with all his fighters. He's really focusing more on defense because he never wants to see that again.
In fairness, I think we should say that after that fight, there was a lot of praise for Buddy McGirt and the way that he handled it. So
correct.
I don't think that there was ever a situation in which someone placed blame on Buddy McGirt's shoulders.
No, exactly.
He did the right thing in stopping that fight when he did.
Sure.
It's just unfortunately it went longer than it needed to.
Buddy did everything right. Anybody can sit back in a chair and Monday morning quarterback. They can come back the next day and say he should have did this or they should have that, whatever. What Buddy did was correct. I think where it fell through the cracks was with the commission and the way they handled the whole situation instead of putting him on a gurney and getting him to a hospital.
Right away.
When he started showing the signs and when he was throwing up and when there were certain signs that were going on with the effects of the traumatic brain injuries that he had, that's where I think it fell through the cracks as far as that goes. Unlike California, where California's commissions have their referees and have their corners and have their doctors and have everybody trained and everybody has a job and they know what to do. Like I've said in the past, California won't have a fight commissioned unless there's a traumatic brain surgeon within 30 miles of the place that's holding a fight.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so even when there was fights out at like Saboba Casino recently, there was some fights out there where Centeno Jr. fought. The nearest hospital was Loma Linda, which was 60 miles away. So they had to pay for a surgeon to come onto the Indian grounds and sit at that hospital just in case something happened, that they could take, if there was a traumatic brain injury, they would take that fighter to the local Indian hospital that they had and then go ahead and airlift them out. But they won't have a fight commission unless there's a traumatic brains, a surgeon there or a unit that can handle that type of situation within 30 miles of the facility.
That's how it should be.
We were with Chocolatito when he got knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
They put him on a gurney. They took him out of there. They put him on an ambulance, and they took him straight to Harbor UCLA when he fought at the StubHub.
Okay.
And they did all the checks and they did everything because you don't know. You just never know because we see the injuries, we see the bloody noses, we see the cuts.
Mm-hmm.
When you guys have external injuries, we see that, but we don't see what's happening inside, and it's just, it falls back on each individual commission. For the longest time, New York had problems with fighters dying. And now they have to have $1 million bond. They have doctors there.
Yeah.
They're a lot more cautious when it comes to the fighters, even to jumping in the ring in between fights and sitting there, like I said, with Ortiz and Wilder for a minute or 2 minutes, checking on Wilder just to make sure he was okay.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know.
The truth is that we talk about a lot of the things that California does well, but a lot of the things that we discuss in terms of rule changes, like, you know, we've talked about a number of them on here, and people have said, you know, what if the count was shorter? What if it was 8 seconds? California has made changes in terms of sanctioning bouts between fighters of certain severity scores. So for those who don't know, every fighter has a severity score, which has to do with how much they've won, how much they've lost, how they've lost recently, things like that, and not making matchups between fighters. None of that stuff would have saved Maxim Dadashev.
No.
Because he was an undefeated fighter in the prime of his career, competing against someone who was competent. The match would have been made here. He would not have been saved by an 8-second count, because that is not how that fight ended. So I think that when we talk about the types of things that we need to change in order to prevent those tragedies, it's really things that are fundamentally just different in terms of boxing contests. It's talking about making sure fighters compete at their weight or above their weight, but not below their weight. It's discussing, like, making contests shorter. It's things that fans may not receive well, but could be better for the fighters. And a lot of the things that have done afterwards come across to me more as posturing, because they would not have helped Maxim Dadashev in that situation, right? So I think it requires a little bit more serious discussion, like, and real, true reform. But people have to care.
Yeah, they have to care. They have to care. And, you know, like I said, a lot has to do, to me personally, with the medical board and having a universal medical board, where if a fighter is not getting sanctioned to fight in California, then he's not getting sanctioned in Texas or Nevada or New York or Iowa. You know, same thing with Daniel Franco.
Yep, I remember.
He got knocked out here, bad. Goes to TJ, wins in 8 seconds, and then
goes to Iowa,
right? The night before Ward Kovalev, the second Ward Kovalev, okay? The night before the second Ward Kovalev, this happened. Why wasn't he on that Ward Kovalev card if he was a Rock Nation fighter?
Yeah.
Right? Is because of the fact that he probably couldn't pass the neurological exams.
Probably.
So they sent him to Iowa, where, yes, they have a state athletic commission, but they have no oversight over combat sports. None.
All they check, I think, is blood to fight.
Yeah, and then they have to drive him 90 minutes to 2 hours to the nearest hospital.
I was his main sparring partner in that training camp as well.
Franco's?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. And apparently, you know, I had read something in the San Bernardino Sun where he had a brain fracture going into that fight. He had an actual skull fracture. I shouldn't say brain fracture, a skull fracture leading up to that fight. So it's just a sad situation. There's a lot of little bits and pieces that need to be fixed. And like you said, people have to care.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not, but that's my point, is it's not really the bits and pieces. There's a lot of big things that need to change, right? Like there's reform that needs to take place. Like the things that you're talking about in terms of even from commission to commission, varying in terms of rules from state athletic commission, state to state. Some have commissions, some do not. To say, like, we're going to go to a universal set of rules is a complete reformation of how we think of boxing today. To say that we're going to reimagine boxing contests so that they're different or that they're better for fighters, it's things that, I mean, look, guys, I had a strength and conditioning coach on here last episode and just caught heat because they're strength and conditioning coaches. They're not, you know, quote unquote boxing guys.
Yeah.
So how do you imagine people will react if, for example, we say, hey, contest should be 10 rounds, 8 rounds, or hey, the state athletic commissions, you know, who's going to lobby to make sure that the state athletic commissions don't have oversight over this stuff anymore?
And they have to care. And they have to care because, you know what? At least California works with certain organizations and sanctioning bodies as far as making sure their weight's on level for 30 days, 2 weeks, 7 days, and then after the fights before the fights that they're not weighing in more than 10 pounds heavier than what they're weighing in.
That's important.
Even if it's just taking a poll just to see how many fighters are actually gaining more than 10 pounds the day of the fight. Where Vegas won't even allow the WBC in there to do any of that. So it's
why take a poll? Why not just say, hey, we're going to measure the level of hydration in your urine. If you're not hydrated, you don't fight. In other words, the only way to lose weight is through nutrition. And balanced nutrition over the course of 60 days.
What it comes down to is it comes down to money. And it comes down to greed. And whether the people want to hear it or not, you guys all know just as well as I do is that's what it comes down to. Just like I was telling you with Manny Pacquiao, right? After his fight with Keith Thurman, he was a little bit out of it. It was a little bit cloudy. He wasn't the normal Manny speaking at the post-press conference. Even if Al Heyman were to say, you know what, Manny, morally, ethically, I can't let you fight again. You know what? You're 40 years old. I don't want you taking that punishment. I'm not gonna promote your next fight through PBC. Guess what? Bob Arum will. Golden Boy will.
Yep.
Somebody will do it.
Somebody will get it.
Chuck Liddell, for instance. How many times has that dude been knocked out?
Yeah.
He gets dropped by Dana White, and who signs him? Oscar De La Hoya, and has him fight over here at the Forum against Tito Ortiz, so he can get knocked out
redemption,
again.
Yeah. They call that redemption, to beat up a guy who hasn't been
something like that.
Fought in 8 years.
And that's the thing. It's what it comes down to is the money. Let's sell these tickets. So what if he gets knocked out? So what that the UFC cut him? Let's make some money off his ass. And that's what it comes down to. Even in boxing, there has to be something better for these fighters. Something that's going to help them not get hurt or even killed in the ring.
But that's got to fall on the fighter as well. Like, for me, I always had good people around me. They wouldn't let me go into a situation like that at all.
Well, it doesn't fall on you. It falls on the people around you. And I'll tell you why. Because you're trained not to give up. Exactly. You're trained not to quit.
Yeah.
So you get in that ring, and even though you're taking punishment, you're getting in there and you're getting hit. Everything in your body's telling you, don't quit. Yeah. Keep going. I can go one more round. Sometimes these fighters have too much heart for their own good. Yep. And that's where the corners have to step in, because sometimes you do have incompetent refs that won't stop a fight. People that they're not used to seeing it. When you're fighting in Maryland, when you're fighting in Iowa, when you're fighting, what was the one where they couldn't even find the goddamn referee, where he was lost for?
That was my fight of the year last year.
In Kansas. You had a double knockdown. The referee fell down.
They knocked the referee down. They knocked each other down.
I didn't see
they
that.
couldn't find. You didn't see that? Oh my god!
They couldn't find the referee.
They couldn't find the referee. He was missing.
So
I'd have to look it up.
I don't
remember what the.
And
fight
that's what
was.
I said.
It was a circus, an absolute circus.
That's where you have to have a team around you to stop it.
Yeah.
To say, you know what, that's enough. The same way Buddy stepped in and said, you know what, that's enough. You have to have good people around you.
Yeah, and to Stacks' point, I think there's a fighter's mentality, which is 9 times out of 10, if I ask you, do you want to continue into the next round, you'll probably say, yeah, I can continue. I can give you one more round.
Yeah.
I think if you ask any fighter out of competition, hey, could you fight 15 rounds? They'll say, I prepare for that. I train that, right? We train 4-minute rounds, 30-second rest. We train that, right? And that's great because they should. They should be prepared, right? But that doesn't have to translate into the professional boxing contest in terms of, like, that doesn't mean we should have 4-minute rounds with 30-second rests or 15-round fights, because at a certain point there's some protection that needs to take place.
Well, a lot of the damage comes from training. You know, when I'm getting ready for a 10-round fight, Buddy doesn't let me. I never spar 10 rounds. He saves it for the fight. The most we'll do is 8, maybe 9, 10 if he feels like it, if I'm doing good. But other than that, he keeps it light. We'll do 4, 6, 8, 8, 8, 6, 8, depending how I'm feeling that day and the day before. He'll just modify it. But he'll never let me go a full 10. He's like, you don't need it. He's like, what's another 2 rounds?
And what, like 9 days leading up to the fight, you stop sparring, right?
Yeah, I'll stop. A week before, I'm not sparring.
Yeah. All recovery at that point in time?
Yeah, then it's just weight cut, recover, and let your body settle down.
Heavy, man.
I'm telling you.
I know.
This is
somehow we get on these tangents every episode. I don't know how it is. If there's an episode that goes where Stacks and I don't talk about rules, I'll give everyone a T-shirt or something like that.
We always we have our own feelings on what rules should be, and
I have passionate feelings about what rules should change.
How fights,
not just feelings.
How fights should be scored and who wins rounds and whatnot. So
the truth is, we agree more than we disagree. I think just when we disagree, it's very verbal and high intensity.
No, it really is, man, because He's got a thick ass skull, and he always thinks he's right, man, for everything.
It's a blessing and a curse.
That's what makes the show so good, though.
No, exactly, man. When we get into it, but no, there's some things that we absolutely agree on 100%, and I think one of them is the safety of the fighters.
Yeah, and in terms of rules, here's something interesting. So Jill Diamond shared on Facebook very recently the WBC for the Loma Janko fight did a live evaluation program that they started. Did you read about that?
No, I haven't.
Well, I took some notes on it. So the WBC did for that fight a live evaluation program in which 8 judges watched the fight on TV with no sound. They scored round by round as a judge would if they were sitting ringside. But they also scored the margin of victory for each round with the measurements of close, moderate, or decisive. And that way, rather than evaluating after the fact when there is controversy, which would be the natural way to evaluate when people complain about a decision, they're actually able to evaluate judges as the event is unfolding. Your thoughts?
You know what? That's not the first time I've heard of something like that wanting to do it, but it's the first time I've ever heard of it happening. I know they wanted to do something during the tournament, during the welterweight tournament that Evander Holyfield was doing, where they had 5 judges, and the judges had on headphones to block out the sounds of the crowd and whatnot. A couple of them watching 3 ringside, or maybe 4 ringside and 2 in the back, or 1 in the back, but it was a total of 5 judges that were gonna take a look at everything, you know. But to me, I think that's a good thing, because they're, like you said, they're able to evaluate it. They're able to see it. They're professionals. They know what's going on, because not everybody at ringside can see the fight the way we do on TV. If you're at home watching it on television, you got 20 different camera views, different angles that you're watching. I sit ringside a lot at fights. And depending if somebody's standing in my way with the beer, if the official's in the way or whatnot, how the ropes are, I'm not seeing what punches are landing. So if there's a fighter with his back towards me, right, and he's getting hit, and you're hitting him, I can't tell if you're landing clean shots or not from the angle I'm looking at. So the judges don't always have the best angles. So to have that amount of judges actually critiquing the fight without the biased, because it is a lot of times the biased commentary, to me, that's a plus. It should happen more often, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I guess one thing I wonder is, does it give you the opportunity to then say, "Hey, look, we went to the panel here and overturned," right? So there's now that you have people who are evaluating high-profile fights on TV, and they can see that information in real time because it's being entered into some sort of web portal that's hosted by the WBC. If 8 judges who are watching at home decided one fighter wins, but the 3 who sat ringside thought the other fighter was, does it give you grounds to turn around and go, "Hey, you guys are overruled"?
You know,
that's it.
I think it does. I think it does. You know, I mean,
yeah, because like you said, the ropes, the people. Some judges don't see the whole fight.
They don't. They don't. You know, I mean,
some guys like Anthony just have no idea how to judge either. That's the other thing.
This guy. Yeah.
Just messing with you.
I
think it's a good thing too.
I don't agree with his style. His style of scoring.
I actually don't have I'm like Bruce Lee when it comes to scoring.
Bullshit.
You know, you have to be formless like water. You know.
I agree. I think that somebody that lands more punches during the round, whether they're the aggressor or not, even if they're backing up, if you're fighting a defensive style like Floyd, right? I'm just going to use him as an example. But you're sticking and you're moving, right? And say me and you are at it, and you're fighting the defensive. I'm coming at you, and you hit me 32 times in that round, right? You land 32 clean shots.
He wouldn't make it out of that round if you hit him 32 times. Just say
not real hard, but you landed you landed your shots, right? But at the end of the round, I crack you with the 3-piece and I cut you, right? He feels that I win the round, not you.
No, not necessarily.
Yes.
If you
now you're going to change the round.
No,
I'm
not changing my mind. What I'm saying is the only sensible answer to how do you score a round is it depends. It's the only sensible answer because so many things could take place in a round. Now, with that being said, what he's referring to is there are instances where a fighter may do a lot of, let's call it boxing. They're using craft. They're using their jab.
Yeah.
They're working around the ring. Yeah. Right? They're landing a couple jabs. Maybe they land, let's call it 15 jabs, right? Now, at the end of that round, if you take a one 3-shot combination that results in splitting your eye open and you almost go down, but you don't. The question is, who wins the round? I think the guy who landed the 3 shots that split your eye open, that almost knocked you down, won that round. Despite the fact that maybe for a lot of 2 minutes and 45 seconds of that round, there was not a lot going on, right? There's just some jabbing contest going on where he's not landing anything. And the truth is actually everybody thinks that. You have to be trained not to think that, okay? And what I mean by that is if 2 gentlemen were sitting right here and a fight took place for a period of 3 minutes and what I just described happened, at the end of that fight, if we were in high school, you and I, at the end of that fight, we would go, damn, that dude got his ass kicked. He got, look at, he's all cut up. He's about to be knocked out.
Fight.
Exactly.
It is a street fight, but what I'm saying is our natural inclination, we have a sense ingrained in us of who won between those 2 individuals. Even if they were using all boxing craft and everything like that, we have a natural inclination. To say that the other person won because of boxing, right, is not the right way to approach it. You're trained to do that. Somebody had to train you not to think that that guy won. And that's, in my sense, it's wrong. If
I see a fight that you described, I'd have to agree with Stacks.
I know. A lot of people do. You guys are all wrong, and that's okay.
You lose.
It's all good. But that's why you have... But that's what it comes down to, man. That's why when you have some of these big fights, like Canelo Triple G, for instance, the first one, you look at the aggressiveness of Canelo and you look at the boxing of G, and you come up with Adelaide Bird, 118, 112. Shit.
That's the problem. See, the problem is what can happen is what I just described to you. That can happen over the course of 10 rounds.
That's true.
Okay? So that could happen 10 times in a row. Okay? Now imagine what one fighter looks like and imagine what the other one looks like. The guy who, in your opinion, lost every round of those 10 rounds, looking fine, right? The guy who I say lost that one round 10 times over, that guy's all beat down. He's all beat down. And that's why you guys are the problem with scoring. Because what happens is at the end of that fight, someone goes, oh, wow, it was 119 scorecard for this person who's beat to shit, right, who clearly didn't win the fight. But, because boxing, because boxing, they won. And that's why it's wrong. Because you guys are thinking in the context of one round. But imagine if that happened for 10 straight rounds. Just imagine that. Imagine that for a moment.
You know what, though?
You lose.
Here's the thing. It wouldn't go 10 rounds because you know what?
The boxer would set him up.
If I've caught him for 3 rounds like that.
Now you guys are just making stuff up.
No. We're going to go back to it. For 3 rounds in a row, I've caught him with 3-piece combos, and I've hurt him and almost knocked him down. If my ass can't finish him by the 5th or 6th round, guess what? I deserve to lose that fucking fight.
That's
I'm just saying.
He's on some nonsense right now.
Yeah.
You would feel that way if you were in the ring with that guy.
If I've hurt you 3 times, but I'm only hitting you 3 times a round, and I'm only catching you at the end of the round, and not trying to finish you off because you keep tagging me and you keep tagging me, guess what? I deserve to lose that.
Who said he's not trying to finish someone off?
I'm
this
just
is
saying.
like Loma Janko wasn't able to finish Luke Campbell, and he hurt him 4 times in that fight, but he wasn't able to put him away. We don't look at it and go, oh, that doesn't count that you hurt that guy. You didn't actually knock him out.
But Luke Campbell wasn't. Of course, we count it. But Luke Campbell wasn't outboxing him.
No, he wasn't. I'm just saying.
You
don't get credit removed. Like we don't remove credit from your boxing ability because you hurt someone but didn't knock them out.
No, but if you do it 3 times and you're only landing 3 punches, but you keep hurting them and you don't go after them when you know you can hurt an individual, every time you hit them and you're hurting them and you're not going after them. Why? Because you're getting tagged 20 or 30 times, even though they're light jabs. Guess who's going to win the fight? The fighter that's landing these 20 or 30 punches in the round is all I'm saying, Sean.
All criteria in boxing are not weighted the same. So there are many boxing criteria by which people judge.
And that's why we're not judges.
Yeah, so shout out to Boxeo. What's up, Boxeo? Thanks for jumping on. But all criteria are not weighted the same. The number one criteria for measuring the success of a fighter in a round is clean and effective punches. The key word there being effective.
Effective.
Right? The challenge that judges have is I'm not a judge. Take me out of that conversation. I don't want to. But the challenge that people have is they have to measure the effectiveness of punches. So at the end of the day, you have to say how many jabs equals 1 power punch. right? How many jabs equals 1? It's a hard decision to make. But the point is, why I say it depends is because it depends on whose power punches they are. It depends on where they landed and how. It depends. Sometimes the guy who jabbed...
It depends on their name.
That's true, too.
It depends on their name. I agree.
Depends if they're a red corner or blue corner. Yeah. A-side or B-side, exactly.
That's very true. And I'm not saying that those things should apply, but the one thing I do think would apply is it really depends. It depends what those power shots are. You really have to take it fight by fight.
Yeah.
So I'm against any situation in which someone says a fighter always wins in this case or a fighter always wins in this case. And the reason I'm against it is because that's what I believe leads to bad scoring. You have to be dynamic. You have to look at it and go, hey, this time those 3 shots won the round. Next time it may be somebody else throwing those 3 shots and they don't win the round.
That's true.
That's all I'm saying. So all I'm saying is,
so back to the 8 judges.
There are cases where it would be different.
8 judges would be good.
So that's why 8 judges is good. Give them their headphones. And what do you think about that?
They're watching it, I think, on TV on mute.
What do you think, man?
I think it's great. Meaning, I'm all for the challenge with doing those types of observations after the fact is that you already know what the public opinion is of who was supposed to win. So you're kind of influenced by the fact that, like, we watch it and we go, wow, Triple G was really supposed to win that first fight. You guys messed up. Right?
Yeah.
And then you go back and you watch it. Now, the people who are doing that evaluation, they know that. They know the public thinks that Triple G won. And that could influence in some way the way that they see the fight. So doing it live in real time, it's a good way to do it.
Exactly.
It's a good way to do it. And I think it does open the door to being able to say, in the cases of really egregious, like, bad decisions, to being able to say, no, you know what? Overruled. We checked it, and 7 other judges said that this person won convincingly for 7 rounds, right? So I'm all for it.
I remember some shit I seen. It was on it was in Vegas at the Hard Rock. It was on the card that Marisol Conejo fought Franchon Cruz on.
Okay.
All right. So you have, I want to say, Cano fighting a kid out of Abel's camp. I want to say Ruslan Madaev. I think that those were the 2 that were going at it. So Cano gets cut with a punch. They call it a punch. And he's just leaking. I mean, he's just leaking blood bad, right? They wave off the fight. Technical knockout, can't continue because of a punch. The guy from the State Athletic Commission, from the Nevada State Athletic Commission, jumps up on the ring, points to the big screen, and it shows that it's a clear headbutt. They overrule it, call it a headbutt, and then a no contest. I didn't know they could do that. I didn't know they could go to replays.
You know what's funny?
to replays. I was like, okay.
I'm all for anything that helps get decisions right. So in that case, like if someone says, oh, well, replay isn't a thing that we do here, but someone actually looked at it and goes, well, no, the decision was bad. If it helps you get the decision right, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
So there should be some type of replays.
Yeah.
I mean,
Las Vegas doesn't.
They need to.
I mean, look at recently with the on the Luke Campbell undercard. They came back and overruled that, called it a no contest.
The Charlie Edwards fight?
Yeah, Charlie Edwards. Now, he was on his way out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
His opponent was he was going to be cooked.
I saw that one.
Yeah, like he was going to be done.
It was still a penalty, man.
But I agree. It was very blatant. It was very blatant. At the end of the day, they got the right decision, so I have no objections.
Nope.
They got the right. If they made the right call, it's fine.
There you go.
That's how it is.
Are they going to rematch that fight?
I'm sure.
Mandatory, I think.
I'm sure
I think they mandated
That
it.
kid's tough.
Yeah, real tough. So
there's our feedback on the WBC live evaluation
I
program.
think that's good. What do we got coming up this weekend, man? Big fights this weekend?
I don't know. What do we got?
Las Vegas.
Tyson
Big card in Las Vegas. Big card. The fights are so-so, but you got a lot of good action. You got Tyson Fury against Otto Wallin.
Mm-hmm.
Sniper Pedraza is going to be fighting on that card.
That's right.
Little Gabe Flores will be on that card. Carlos Cuadras is on that card. The kid that was with Golden Boy, he's now with Top Rank, Shabransky. He'll be fighting on that card. So you got some good fights, and then you have the fights at the StubHub Center. Will you be going to those fights?
I will not be going, but of course I will be watching them.
And then both. Okay, so at the StubHub Center, you have the Jaime Munguia fight.
Jaime Munguia.
What's his name? Altoy?
Yeah, and Ryan Garcia.
Yeah, and then Ryan Garcia. But both of the main events now, because it's the biggest boxing weekend for Mexicans, September 16th, Mexican Independence Day weekend, both of the fights will be for the WBC
Mayan belt.
The Mayan belt.
The
That's
Mayan
a new belt
belt.
they just got.
So basically, it's a commemorative belt. It's a commemorative belt, and that's what a lot of people don't. Oh, what kind of championship belt? No, it's a commemorative belt for the fights that happen on Mexican Independence Day weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the 70s, man. This goes back to when. Yes. Yeah, Chango Carmona. Yeah, he was the
Thank
first
you,
one
Nancy.
to win. He fought at the Coliseum. Good fight. He was the first Mexican to win a world title on Mexican Independence Day, and since then it was a Mexican holiday, except in the early 2000s when Floyd took over. But he'd still go in the ring with his sombrero on. So
You see, he's going to fight an exhibition in China,
Again?
announced September 18th.
Again?
Yeah, in China this time.
Against who?
They haven't said. They said the official announcement will be September 18th.
So he needs more money.
You know what? I can't blame a guy. $9 million for
That's
a minute
what I'm
30.
saying.
I can't blame. I would do it too.
Yes, Sorio, Aaron, yes, Frampton. He will be fighting against Dogbo on the Jose Carlos Ramirez Victor Postal
Your
undercard.
stablemate.
Dogbo's looking real good in the gym right now.
Is he?
Real good, yep. He's training with James Toney and his pops,
Yeah.
and they're really changing the style up, and I think you guys are going to see a new Dogbo come this fight.
Yeah. We got invited to see him work out. I guess he is going back to Maywood on Friday. Him and James Toney are going
He
to
goes
Maywood.
there 3 days a week for sparring,
Yeah.
but then he's up at our gym training on
So,
every other day.
Yeah, this Friday, if you ain't doing nothing, swing by Maywood. Dogbo will be there with James Toney. You got an open invitation. Just tell him Stack sent you.
Tell him Stack sent you. That sounds like a promo we have to cut into here. Stop by Maywood. Tell him Stack sent you. I guarantee you they'd be like, who? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Not bad. All right. What else? Is that it?
Man, that's it, man. I mean, hopefully, like we said, we'll see you in the ring. We said that.
Yeah.
We talked about the Mayan belt.
We talked about the Mayan belt for sure.
And when all the conquistadors back in the days, all the Mayan conquistadors, Fury and Valen and all those guys came, and they were the great Mayan warriors of Mexico. Thursday and Friday, where at?
There's somewhere that we can hold the belt,
Sean?
the Mayan belt. Oh, just me?
Sean, you can.
Oh, it's just me? Okay. Never mind. I'll edit that part out later.
Also, be on in 2 weeks. You got the big fight coming up between Earl Spence Jr. and Sean Porter, September 28th at the Staples Center. This is a big fight. It's a unification fight. The odds right now are minus 900 for Earl Spence, but everybody that I've talked to so far is like, Porter's a live dog. Porter's a very live dog on this fight. Personally, I don't see it, but I've been wrong on several occasions. So, you know, maybe Sean can prove the critics wrong again and unify the titles. It's for the IBF and the WBC belts. So, and we'll see what happens.
I have a lot of appreciation for Porter, but I'm with you. I don't see him pulling out the victory on that. And that's, you know, I don't want to discredit any fighter. Of course he's a live dog. Like, I think you could say that about, he's had tremendous success as a professional. There's no way that you can count him out and say he cannot win this fight. But, you know, if we're talking about who are you picking to win the fight, it's Errol. Like, come on, it's Errol.
Yeah, I got Spence on that.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be.
So tell us where we can find you at on social media.
Where should we follow you, man?
Blu Nose Lopez on Instagram. That's all I really use is Facebook, Adam Lopez. I'm trying to get more active with my Instagram. I feel like I've been slacking on it, so I've been having a lot of my friends with like cameras and stuff come in and film and trying to put more stuff out, more content, get a bigger following, and just build my name up.
Awesome. Stacks, what do you got?
Also, if he's fighting in November, either November 2nd, you know, that's the plan right now. Make sure you come out to the StubHub Center. That's the night that Burchell's going to be taking on Jason Sosa. Blu Nose should be on that undercard. Hopefully he is. Continue to follow him on social media. You can follow me at Supreme Boxing on our website, supremeboxinginc.com, and on social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find us on all three of those. Be sure also to stop by Friday night if you're in Vegas to the Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame Interactive Museum inside of Heads Up. We will have special guest Mikey Garcia. So for $25, you can come in, take pictures, get autographs, and also be entered in a drawing to win 2 tickets to the Tyson Fury fight this Saturday. BluNose, you'll be there Friday night.
I'll be there, yep.
We have some other special guests that'll be there Friday night. So just go ahead and stop by, man. Say what's up. Say hi. And like I said, make sure to follow BluNose on social media. I'm going to help him out. And if you follow him and you hashtag Supreme Boxing, hashtag Blu Nose Lopez, and have like 10 people follow his page, we'll put you in a drawing to win a free autographed Adam Lopez boxing glove.
Thanks, Stacks. Appreciate that.
Awesome. As for me, I firstly want to give a shout out to Podium Sports. I appreciate you guys.
That's right. Congratulations, my man. Podcaster of the year right here.
I could have sworn that had to be either you or Coach who nominated me for that, but
I've never even heard of Podium Sports, but congratulations anyways. And
why you always
and I'm not trying to say I just haven't heard of you guys, but I'm following you now, Podium Sports, and thank you for nominating my friend here. So
I truly appreciate the nomination. I couldn't do it without the remarkable excuse me, I'm already flubbed. I'm gonna have to write this down. I'm just kidding. Remarkably talented people who are surrounded by me, including guests like Adam Lopez and, of course, co-hosts like Stacks. I appreciate you guys. Thank you to Podium Sports. This episode is brought to you by Combat Sports Collective, logo of champions. Combat Sports Collective brand offers all sorts of things, including the waters that you see here, as well as apparel, strength and conditioning, although I know that subject is now taboo. Strength and conditioning. That's where it's at. And, of course, follow me on Instagram at Beat the Count or Beat the Count on Facebook. And that's all I've got for you. All right, guys. I appreciate you. That's it for this week. I'll see you next week.
Peace.
Peace.